This interview is a part of the Oklahoma Historical Society's Oral History Program, Living Legends Collection. This interview was originally conducted on March the 15th, 1965. The interview was conducted by Mr. Frank Doyle. The interviewee is Mr. C.A. Tilghman, and that's Tilghman of Oklahoma City. This interview is being re-recorded on June the 24th, 1985, for inclusion in the permanent collections of the Oral History Program by Judith Michener.
Do you want to...
No, we're all right, just as we
will
are.
You ask me any questions?
As you talk along, I'll probably interrupt you and ask you some questions. Your name, you spell the name Tilghman, Mr.
Tilghman.
Tilghman, Mr. C.A. And you can be mighty proud of being 86 years old because you don't look it. And you really don't act it either. How do you feel?
I haven't too good at talking voice. I'm a little bit hoarse, and I've been using it a long time.
You came from where to Oklahoma?
We came from Dodge City.
And that was
in 1891. Is going now.
Mm-hmm.
You can't.
That's all right. In 1891, and
yeah.
you
went to Guthrie, Oklahoma, from Dodge City, and in the summer of 1891, and we lived at Guthrie there for till after the opening of the Iowa and Sycan Fox Reservation, of which Chandler is the county seat.
Back at Dodge, you have any memories of Dodge City?
And,
you have any memories of old Dodge City?
Oh, yes. See, I was 13, 14 years old, and at the time I left there, and I had, of course, I went to school there until we came to Oklahoma, and our school was on Old Boot Hill, which is not a historical spot. The significance of it was, I guess you know, that the people that were killed there in Dodge with their boots on were a lot of them were adventurers, a great many of them were, and they were buried on that site.
Up on Boot Hill.
And that's historical, all right. No question about that. And the school building was built on that spot afterward, as we began to get a little more civilized. And that's where I went to school. And when we came to Oklahoma, the family lived at Guthrie, and it was just before, as I said, the opening of this the Iowa and Sycan Fox Indian Reservation, and when we left Dodge, we left about 30 head of practically wild horses there running on the prairie. And since there was a time when they were using horse to run for claims in Oklahoma, why there was a pretty good demand for horses. And Father sent me back there to get with an old buffalo hunter friend of his to gather up those horses and bring them to Oklahoma, which we did. And
how long did it take you to drive them down there?
We were 5 days and a half driving from Dodge City to Guthrie.
That's a long time on a horse, isn't it?
Yes, we were making about 50 miles a day. We drive from early in the morning until late at night. Well, 50 miles is a pretty good day's travel on a horse. And there were really two boys. There was another boy that helped drive them, and we all took turnabouts guarding the horses at night, as there were no fences, no place to put them up, and they being wild, why naturally their instinct would be to go back to where they came from. But by driving them all day, why they were not too restless. They'd have to eat at night, and then when we got them on the road, why we kept them going. There wasn't any roads after we got out of Kansas. Actually, we came across what was then called the Cherokee Strip, and there wasn't a fence or a house or any sign of life except wildlife across the country. And we drove from. We came through near where Enid is now. On the trip was an angle drive from where we came into Kansas down to Orlando, which is right north of Guthrie. And they got the horses to Guthrie. Father started to selling them there for these people who were making the runs, and they brought $50 a head, where they weren't worth $1 a head in Kansas prairies, and we left there.
Yeah, what's that? What'd you do when you got here?
Well,
Go to school?
After Father took a farm over there, and we went over there along in about 1902, and made improvements on the farm there, and I was back and forth from there for up until about 1905 or 6, and I went to Guthrie and took a business course at the first business college Oklahoma had, called the Capital City Business College. And after I got through with that, why, I was ready to go to work. And I started working for the Wells Fargo Express Company, and I had the biggest horse I ever saw to drive to a wagon to deliver packages, and I had, in addition to their work there, why, I carried mail to the train from the post office, bringing it up at about 5 o'clock in the morning and taking it down at 9 o'clock at night.
Oh, boy.
That's kind of the hours of the Wells Fargo. Yeah. And I got $25 a month for that. And the company sent me at different places around. I don't think they kept anybody too long in one place there, and maybe they ought not to say anything about that in this, because I'm not plugging them.
That's right.
But that's the way it was. But finally, I was sent up to Ottawa, Kansas. And out of that office, I went on a run as a messenger to a country, outlying country there, where they had a good deal of produce for the Kansas City market, and that was pretty rough job, really, in this way, that long hours, and after the day's run down and back to Ottawa, why, we had to meet trains and put all this stuff on the trains going in to Kansas City and out of Ottawa for these outlying points. And those were pretty long hours, having to make a train at midnight and another one at about 4 o'clock in the morning, actually. And that interfered with sleep a good deal, of course. Well, I had 2 months of that, and I thought that was enough, and I decided I'd try and get other work. So I was looking for an opportunity to go into a bank, and I had a chance to go over into a bank that was being organized in Chandler, and I went over there in February of 1900, and I was a bookkeeper and janitor and cashier and anything that was needed to be done at $30 a month. I worked the first year for $30 a month. Stop it now and let me ask you something. I got a $10 raise each year there.
How long did you stay there?
Huh?
How long were you there?
Well, I was in the bank from 1900. In 1902, we nationalized and moved to a new location in Chandler. And about 1906 there, the man who was president of the bank went out into other work and with the government, and he made me president of the bank. I was 27 years old at that time. And probably, as far as I know, the youngest president of the National Bank Oklahoma's had.
That's only 27, huh?
Yeah. And while I was in there, in 1907 we had a panic, which was well known in history, and I was president of the bank at that time, and I didn't have too much help from the directors. Didn't have anybody was very much experienced, especially in banking there, that was much help to me. But I got through in good shape there. I didn't have any difficulty at all. And it didn't seem to make any difference to the bank thereafter. We got on and went ahead all right. And there were 3 banks there in the town at that time, one which was headed by Hugh Johnson, who later came to Oklahoma City and reorganized what is now the First National Bank. Trust me. And the other was the old firm of bankers and merchants up there who had a string of banks at that time, one of which was in the Union National Bank at Chandler. And well, I was in the bank there as the president of the bank from 1906 to 1911, at which time I sold out. And that ended my banking experience up there. And after I went out of the bank at Chandler, I went out to Lawton and bought in a bank out there. and I was in there about 4 months and decided it wasn't the best place for me, and I sold out there, and
What did you decide to do
Robert
then?
to Chandler from Lawton, and engaged in business other than banking there. And in 1916, I came to Oklahoma City, and I went in the farm mortgage business here, which didn't prove very satisfactory in the end, except I gave you the trouble with the farm mortgage business. I'd rather not say anything about that.
What happened after that?
Just what I've said about it. Well, let's see. After that, after 1920, and even before, I had a good deal of interest in lands. Which I looked after largely myself. I finally got more of them than I could take care of, and had to have help in that. But I operated them, rented them, that is, and looked after them. Drove many hundreds of thousands of miles actually in that work. But I was
well, that took you around the state quite a lot.
How's that?
It took you all around the state then, didn't it? It took you all around the state looking after the property.
I had at that time I had land in most of it in Oklahoma, but I had it in New Mexico, Arkansas, Texas, one or two in Kansas that I had. Since that time, I have liquidated probably in the neighborhood of 100 farms. I had them all right, and I've have I got that in good shape or not?
In the meantime, you had your office here in the city then.
I told the story and then I started to record it. Why I've kind of got off on it. This is just where I am now.
Well, after liquidating the farms.
Yes. Well, yes. I have I've been doing that for several years. I've liquidated most of the land, except a few which I'd given my son. I've given him several farms, and I've kept one. Only one farm myself now. I have. It's a fine farm, and
you know, in all that time that you have been working hard and everything else, I understand you're a pretty good hunter. You like to hunt.
Yes, I've hunted all my life, probably longer than anybody in Oklahoma. And both feather game and elk and deer, and I've been quite a trout fisherman. I've had really a very interesting life, and I'm the only man I know that has done all his life the things he wanted to do. I don't believe anybody has had. I wouldn't say anybody, but there's not very many has had as satisfactory life as I've had. I've never been bored in my life, and I've been able to do the things I wanted to do, and do yet. And I take care of my own business, of course, and I have a couple of trips a year to go place to Florida in the mountains or the coast somewhere, and I just figured I had prepared for it, and I'm getting advantages of it now.
Well, you made up your mind to it a long time ago, didn't you?
I started out with a purpose. I just didn't vary from it. I knew what I wanted to do.
You've seen a lot of interesting things happen around here, around the state.
Yes, I have. There's a lot of them. You can't live as long as I have without a lot of things happening. The development of so many things has happened, most of it in my span of life.
Mm-hmm.
So I can remember when the first telephones came in, and the telegraph beat me a little bit, but long before the auto age.
Mm-hmm. We've moved pretty fast then, haven't we?
Hmm?
Moved pretty fast.
Oh my, now I've got on a gallop now, but my horse and buggy days. I haven't any regrets. I've had a good life. I'm entirely satisfied with it. I've never been. I was too old for service in the First World War.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, I have just done the things I like to do all my life.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a wonderful wife, and we've all been healthy.
How much of a family do you have?
This boy's the only one I have.
One son, huh?
My wife's still living.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you live?
We live up near the Capitol.
Mm-hmm. Where'd you live when you...
historical building.
Oh, yeah. Where'd you live when you first came here? You recall?
We lived over on 14th Street.
Mm-hmm. Out in the country on 14th Street, huh?
No, I never lived in the...
Then it was country, wasn't it?
But I spent a lot of time in... Summers, always been away in the summers. And,
Yeah.
Usually in the winter, the worst part of the winters.
Mm-hmm.
And we drove to Florida this winter. I can drive. I don't think I ought to say that in this path, but I can drive 500 miles a day without turning a hair. We drove back from Florida there in 3 days. We were on the west coast of Florida.
Well, you still go hunting too, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Hunt birds?
Yes, I do, and I can shoot a rifle a day. I was open sights, just better than most people, I think.
Now you're in the investment business, and you and your son.
I just have my own investments, just stocks and bonds, and I have one farm, royalties.
Mm-hmm.
I don't Don't have a half a dozen royalists.
But enough to keep you busy, huh? Keeps you busy.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
There's one of them.
Uh-huh.
There's another.
Uh-huh.
I'm not putting this in there.
Uh-huh.
That's another one. That's another one. This one. No, if I hadn't gotten rid of those, I'd have been really in bad shape. Well, do you think that's enough, or is there anything else? I've given you a pretty good
I think it's a pretty good rundown.
life there. Good deal of it bragging, but I've had a good life. I've had a good life. I've never had anything to worry about. I think it's, I wouldn't trade it with anybody I know.
Oh, that's a good feeling then.
Listen,
That's a good feeling.
we had a wife that was congenial. We've done things together all our life and been a very happy family, actually.
Good.
I've had a few interesting friends. You know George Short, do you?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
He's the one who told me about Serenity.
Mm-hmm.
George used to be my executor, and I'm not with him too much, but I talk with him when I think it's advisable. He's a fine man. I hope they'll elect him.
He's done a nice
Right.
job so far, hasn't he? He's done a fine job so far.
Yes. Well, he'll do it all the time, for instance. He has the spirit and the civic-minded and everything else. I think a lot of George. I think he's a very reputable person.
Mm-hmm.
He and Charlie are quite good friends.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what my wife would think if I'd let her ever listen to this thing.
Well, I think we covered quite a bit, particularly the early history is so interesting about how people got started.
I think it's covered much out of it as you think is anything that isn't interesting. Well, you can cut it, can't you?
Oh, yes.
Sure. Just take what you think of it as. It really would make a pretty big book of various items, you know. And there's a lot of humor in it, and not too much tragedy.